Hello, it is Ryan, and we could all use an extra bright spot in our day, couldn't we? Just to make up for things like sitting in traffic, doing the dishes, counting your steps, all the mundane stuff. That is why I'm such a big fan of Chumba Casino. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere with daily bonuses. That should brighten your day a little. Actually, a lot. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com. That's ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
So here we are in the post show, like we promised, and this is where we just, we do whatever we want. I'm going to start vaping here in a second. We're just hanging out, talking about the guys that, we didn't really get to talk to about in the first hour, and then kind of get a little back and forth, talk about anything, about life, get on a rant. I don't care. That's the whole point of the post show. We do whatever the hell we want. This is extra bonus content for everybody. The reason this came to be, I'll just give a little background on this. Adam made this point. We spend an hour to an hour and a half after we're done recording our main show just bullshitting on fantasy football and players in general. And you're like, you know what? Sometimes that post show can be just as interesting as the main show when it's all said and done. Some of the conversations we've had. Go ahead, Chris.
I was going to say to that point, Dan, I think, the listeners might not realize you got to squeeze a lot of information out when you're trying to keep a show in a certain time frame and keep different segments moving and keep people who have guests and us all having our opinions, where we don't really get to talk about some of the things. And we did a lot of research. We looked up a lot of different stuff that we kind of went decompressed in a sense after our show. We didn't have topics we got to or things we still have burning in our chests. And like I said, it's really hard to always get to all in an hour for our viewers and listeners.
Yeah, I mean, it's we've got to put in the package that the viewers want to have, right? But I do think there's enough viewers out there, enough listeners out there who like to get a sneak peek behind the curtain and also get some extra little tidbits. I mean, to your point, Chris, look, there's no show out there who gets everything they researched for that show compact into their show. It's not possible to do. But so to that point, I'll go to Adam first on this one. One of the things that we wanted to try to get to the first hour, we didn't get to it, but I wanted each of you to choose one guy from your top 12 rankings that you think has the best chance to outperform where you have that guy ranked in your top 12 rankings. So who'd you have there, Adam?
Well, I'm going to kind of throw you a loop. I know for me, you have written down DJ Giddens, but I think based on rankings, Devin Neal might be edging him out, or at least they're pretty similar cases in terms of me having them over consensus. I love both of them, and I am higher than consensus on both those players. I'm sure we'll talk about both to some degree, but I think for me, Devin Neal is the one I'm a little bit more excited to talk about right this second. And look, I just think he's a back that does all of the things right. I think he's someone who has sneaky workhorse potential, just in the sense that, he's handled a ton of usage through college. His attempts percentile, for example, over the last 2 seasons, it's right there in line with, not quite Genty or Marion Hampton, but he's handled more than Scatabo over the last 2 seasons, for example. He's right in line with a Quinshon Judkins. He's more than a Tootin. These are guys who were workhorses, and he's right there along with them, and I think that goes overlooked. Not quite an elite athlete, but again, I think he's an athlete that gets overlooked. He had a really healthy relative athletic score. I'm pulling up the exact numbers now, but not a bad athlete. I think he gets a worse rep than is necessarily deserved. He's above average, just maybe not.
What sucked about that, right, was because you had every running back and their mom running 4.45.
Yeah, exactly.
And then Devin Neal came out and was like, "Oh, you're in a 4.5. You're slow. You're slower than my grandma. You suck."
Right. When 4.58 is perfectly fine in reality, especially for a guy, at that, 213, whose explosive ratings were fantastic. His vertical and broad jump were both really good. And, he did the shuttle, was pretty poor, but I thought he moved perfectly fine on tape, so I'm not overly concerned with that. And again, he's someone who, yards per route run was really healthy. Avoided tackles per attempt was really healthy. Just does a lot of things right. Again, I thought his vision was really good. I think his acceleration was great, and again, that shows through the jumps, the broad and the vertical. And I thought he did a good job of avoiding tackles. So he's someone who I just think gets lost. We talked about this with a lot of guys at all positions, especially running back and the receiver over the last few years, where if you're just like a B player at a lot of things, but you don't have any like A attributes, sometimes you get lost in the shuffle. It's like you're not special at one thing, so nobody's getting super excited about you. But sometimes those are the guys that are awesome in the NFL. I think that, I mean, that this isn't a Devin Neal comparison. This is why this post show is so fun. But like, that's the Justin Jefferson conversation, right? Like, Justin Jefferson was a guy who was B+ across the board.
You heard it here first in the post show. Devin Neal equals Justin Jefferson.
No, but I'm just saying, like, sometimes the guys that end up being awesome in the pros are guys who are like, oh, they're just like well-rounded. And
Absolutely.
not saying that Devin Neal is fantastic, not saying he's gonna have a Justin Jefferson type career. He's a really well-rounded running back who does most everything you could possibly ask him to do at an acceptable rate. You can put him out there, ask him to do whatever you want, he's gonna get the job done. Might not be the best that anyone could do, but like, I don't know, I think he could have a Kyron type of career going. Not that he is a Kyron style of runner, but I think he could be one who it's like, oh, but you didn't test well. Oh, but you're not like super flashy. But like, you keep being incredibly fantasy relevant because your coach trusts you.
Yeah. I mean, look, I pointed out when we were having our Juggins and Travion Henderson debate. He's the only other running back who's had 3 years of 1,000 yards, in every season. That's hard to do in college football. I mean, you talk about committees in the NFL. There's 10 times that in college football a lot of time, even with really good running backs, especially when you're, a loaded program and you get all kinds of recruits constantly 24/7. And look, was there times where because of his limitations as an athlete, I was like, I wish I could get more out of you. Like, I wish I could project you with a higher ceiling, and I really can't. Yeah, sure. But I mean, I comped him to Mark Ingram. Like, Mark Ingram was a really good player for a really long time. And I think Devin Neal is probably going to do or should do a lot more than that to get the opportunity in the receiving game. Like, I don't see why that would. He's definitely more of a natural receiver than Mark Ingram was.
Yeah, I mean, to that point, you have the 3 years of 1,000 yards rushing, but then you also have 2 and then 1 year that's really close of an over 1 yards per route run. It's like, that's a really good balance to have.
Was this past year? Yeah, this past year he had 1.3.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it was really high this past year. Had 1 year, I think he barely was over 1, and the one that's like 0.88, I think. So like, hovering around that 1 mark is pretty good, and was really good this past season.
To be clear here, though, I mean, Devin Neal is going to outperform consensus ranking. I don't see how he outperforms your number 5 overall at this crazy running back class position ranking.
Yeah, and again, this is one where I love him, and I get to have him this high right now because that is genuinely based on the analytics and based on my film grade. This is where I have him. But once you add draft capital, once you add, because right now I don't care about that, but that's something that does come into play when it's all said and done before we're actually doing dynasty drafts, or at least I'm not one to draft dynasty teams this early.
No, yeah, I mean, rookie class at least the very. If you're drafting rookies right now, you're a moron. Okay, there's no reason to do it before you actually see where these guys land at. Like, that's just this is beyond dumb. I know some guys make the argument like, well, if you really know what you're doing, then you can get like a hand up on people. I'm like, look, even if you really know what you're doing, you still have no freaking clue what the NFL teams are going to do. Like, they throw everybody curveballs all the time. Chris, who's going to be your guy that was going to outperform who you had in the top 12?
Mine's Tahj Brooks. I'm talking about a guy who does a little bit of everything, all around guy. Tahj Brooks to me is that guy. Ran a 4.5 into 4. Ran around 4.5, so it was 40. I think it was a 4.51 or something, 4.52. Rated about 230 pounds, 5'9", so a smaller guy. Doesn't need a whole lot of blocking in front of him. Has the history of being a bell cow, so he's showed you can do the bell cow back. Has been in college a little while, so I understand maybe a little knocks on his age, but a guy who's definitely a willing pass protector. He has, was one of the guys who I think is one of the better guys out there in his class in pass protection. So I think he won't hurt you on 3 downs. So on top of a guy that I think can, start looking at different things. Okay, you pass protect, you catch the ball a little bit, run pretty well. Then suddenly you could be a 3-down back opportunity. So this is a guy I think once he gets in the field is going to kind of stay out there longer and longer. A guy that I think has, all the things I'm looking for in goal line situations, and then also in the big passing attack, like I said. So you like the versatility as usage could be for him. Tahj Brooks is a guy that I think, depending on where he goes, Adam talked about, it's a good chance he might go later rounds. So that happens. He could get buried on the bench somewhere. But I think right now is the guy that I look at, and I've been, a fan of for the last couple of years, where I just see a guy who's just consistently one of the better running backs year in, year out, and gets everything it's kind of, opportunity to do it, and just gets you a little bit more every time. So I think coaches are going to like him. And I think that he's a guy that, like I said, that once he gets on the field, might still be more playing time. And just the Neal point real quick, like I like Neal a lot. My problem with him is that there's a lot of guys who are the early down backs that I like a lot more. We talked about Jenkins. We talked about Miller. Not Miller. Sorry. We talked about Miami's running back. And there's different guys out there that I think when it comes to Neal, that 40 did hurt him, and that tape hurts him in a sense where I definitely was left wanting more too, Dan, where I think he's a good running back, but you didn't really see any explosive games. You didn't see any dominant games. It was always pretty good. And that to me sometimes is hard to kind of stand out in the NFL, where you can easily get kind of lost, as Adam alluded to. And that's why I'm a little bit farther down on my board, but I definitely think he's one of the better running backs in this draft as well.
Well, pretty good, and didn't play like a ton of competition, right? I mean, the guy was playing in the Big 12. It's not like they're playing against any top schools, so for him to not have those big games. But to your point on Tahj Brooks, I don't think he ran a 4.5, right? I think people look at that and they're like, oh, he's just a so-so athlete. And yes, to his measurables, yeah, very, very average as an athlete. But Chris, kind of your point, there's certain guys that they just have good instincts as running backs. That's what I just look at Tahj Brooks. He has good instincts. Like, he makes tackles. He makes tackles force miss. Like, 33rd in that. He had 58. But I think what surprised people is he was tied for 4th in carries over 15 yards. Like, it's a pretty significant stat, especially when you're talking about a guy that you don't think of as a tremendous athlete, because he just makes the right moves. He makes the right reads through, his vision and everything like that. And he's able to pull up those chunk yardage. Like,
how to have fun anytime, anywhere. Step 1, go to ChumbaCasino.com.
ChumbaCasino.com. Got it.
Step 2, collect your welcome bonus.
Come to Papa welcome bonus.
Step 3, play hundreds of casino-style games for free.
That's a lot of games, all for free?
Step 4, unleash your excitement.
Woohoo!
Chumba Casino has been delivering thrills for over a decade. So claim your free welcome bonus now and live the Chumba life. Visit ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
He's built like a bowling ball too, which I think is huge when you're squatty.
Right, exactly. Like, is he going to fill up the highlight reel? No, but can he be a guy who's like uber efficient, uber reliable? Let's put it that way, uber reliable. That's definitely a Tahj Brooks in my mind. So I like that. This guy, like, I think part of me, like, I talk commonly on the show that I am a 49ers fan, and a self-loathing 49ers fan, by the way. I'm not one of these guys that like pumps them up constantly. Like, I mostly hate what they do. And I think part of me is like trying to like prepare myself for the idea that I'm probably going to wind up drafting yet another running back in the 3rd round. And I think it's going to be this guy. So it's Dylan Sampson for me. He cracked my top 12. He's the perfect zone type running back. I mean, ran in Tennessee, so it's kind of easy to see it from that perspective. But like Miami and San Francisco is looking for these athletic, smaller type backs to kind of like work through the zone. Like, he's kind of fitting that mold. The Rams, with Kyron and stuff like that. I mean, he's only 5'8", 200. The one thing I'll give Sampson, he's young. Like, I think if he's not the youngest, he's one of the youngest. Like, he's only 20 years old. He's not even 21 yet. So I do give him that. And there's a lot of things that I liked on tape, like for a 5'8", 200-pound guy. Like, he made he forced a lot of missed tackles. Like, he was 11th. He had 70 of them for the year. And for a smaller guy, it still had 3.6 yards after contact. So he had good contact balance. The one thing I'll give with that, though, is like with Tennessee, the offense they run, like, he might have never seen a stack box. Like, I watched it on film. Like, maybe you had 7 guys in the box once, like at some point. Like, so that is part of it. Like, how long of a learning curve is that going to be for a smaller guy? He's fine, but not uber efficient as a receiver. I will say this though, like, so we talk about, combines and for him, he didn't work out in the combine. He had a pro day, which I think was like a 4.51 40. I'm going to say this, like, Dylan Sampson on film definitely to me stuck out as you have another gear that he goes to on the field when he gets into that third level. Because I never saw the guy get hawked down. Once he was on third level, he was gone. 100%. So I don't really care what his measurables say as far as his speed goes. I see on the film when a guy has a second gear, he goes to it, he used it. That usually translates. You have football speed. Dylan Sampson has football speed. You guys tell me what you think about this. Like I comped him to Tajay Spears, and everybody loves Tajay Spears, and I see a lot of similarities between the two, frankly.
It's not a bad one. I mean, that's not a bad comp at all. Adam, what do you think?
No, I agree. Sampson is someone who he got kind of bogged down for me because my film grade for him is high. Early on in the process, he was really high. It was just some of the analytics just weren't that great. His rushing grades weren't that great. His yards per out run was above average, but not great. Avoided tackles per attempt, above average, not great. Like it was just I don't know. He was a weird one for me. Where like on tape, I liked him as a speedback almost as much as I liked Henderson. But the stats and like the efficiency metrics specifically were just so much better for Henderson. That's why I ended up having Henderson as high as I did, having Sampson the other ways. But sometimes it's just like you trust the film grade. So I'm not like against the idea that Sampson's the better speedback. It just I don't know. I struggle with him.
To the film grade thing, Adam, for me, Dan, I think he definitely has the speed he talked about. I don't have any questions about his speed. That's definitely something that if I'm going to draft him, I'm banking on that he can make explosive plays. But I always saw him in space. It was really hard to judge him versus the rest of the running back class, where I got to kind of see the other guys be in tight situations or different places where they kind of had to utilize their vision. It was almost like if he's custom made for like the draws and the quick gap runners. Like he didn't have a lot of times where he had to make a linebacker or a defensive lineman miss or even break those tackles. You took the tackle broken percentage. It was like a lot of them were corners and safeties that he broke the tackles on, which is awesome because he's a second level. But you didn't really see him as he breaking a tackle from a 250-pound linebacker. Is he be able to shake off that guy that gets penetration and defensive tackles? What you saw was usually he got ahead of steam and he got to be running north and south pretty quickly, and then he got to go one way or another and took off. So I think, talk about the fits, I think there's definitely a lot of teams that will be interested with his scheme, his own scheme fits. I just had a hard time keeping him up there because I'm with you. I don't think he could definitely produce where I have him ranked. But I have questions of whether you could ever be a featured back. Can you ever be more than a kind of pass catcher where I don't think you're ever going to be a guy that I necessarily flare out or use as a weapon in the passing game as a chess piece. But I do think you're a guy that I can use, as angle routes and different things. You can definitely beat guys on option routes out of the backfield. But I was worried about him when it comes to, what do you kind of translate with such a small build? And I didn't really get to see the physicality that he could kind of bring the game with that smaller size. I just got to see a guy who could kind of be pretty in a sense. Like, yeah, you get to be the pretty piece in an offense. Yeah, you're going to produce. Well,
and then when you think about, Jalen Hyatt, who was a real pretty piece and then really hasn't panned out to do anything in the NFL, like it could be like tomato situation. But Samson's kind of somebody that I've come around on, like, not necessarily because I saw something different on film or anything like that from what I was originally looking at. It was more just, I think early in the process, Sampson was getting touted like as the top 5 running back in the class. And I was like, well, hold on. Like I don't see that. But now that he's kind of cooled down a little bit back to what value I had him at, now I'm like, okay, well, I can pop him up like as like this is a value guy. Now you're finally, valuing him properly amongst the consensus to begin with. I was like, he's never a top 5 guy. Like that drove me crazy when this process first started.
Little different size, and you used this comp from somebody else earlier. But I think he reminds me stylistically a lot of Tevin Coleman, like of that guy who's more of a speed guy, as a more of a sprinter guy, more of a getting me into space type of guy. As a pass catcher, I can catch the ball, but I'm not necessarily a guy that I'm flexing out or using necessarily like Christian McCaffrey or anything like that. But is a guy that you can kind of utilize the speed different ways.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't stylistically, I don't disagree. Kevin Coleman, I don't know. I always had a soft spot for him. I love the guys who glide. Kevin Coleman was always a glider to me. So I was always kind of a soft spot for that. But some of the things that we had, because we have a guideline for post show. It's not like it's all chaos, but we do whatever we want ultimately. But I did want to ask you guys this question. When we're talking about these later, drafted running backs, what is it that you value the most? And I put them in 3 different types. You guys can tell me if I was right or wrong, but I think I narrowed it down to it's either a do-it-all handcuff guy where he's like, okay, you're not really quite talented enough to be a starter for sure, but if you get called upon in an injury situation, you can do it all. You might get a lot of volume. Those are popular waiver wire pickups when you find those guys. The receiving specialists and the grinder types. So which one of those types do you guys like value the most? If you wanted to list them 1, 2, 3.
I'll jump in. I go with explosive guys. I mean, to me, I'm looking for the guys with that you can get the most bang for the buck in a sense. I'm not going to sell out completely athlete, but I'm going to err more on the guys who are more athletic for the guys who are more like solid all-around players. I'm looking for the guys who did produce, because that's a big thing to me. I'm looking at production. I'm talking about how many carries you've had and what you've done in college. It does matter to me. But I'm looking for those guys that, have that ability that if they get out there, could be something that a spark, a big play. The grinders are probably the guys I value the least in a sense, because I feel like they're the hardest ones to project what their value is going to be. You're looking for the touchdowns. You're looking for the early yardage. Those guys can get kind of forgotten about, especially different offenses, and they can get rotated in or out, where teams don't necessarily utilize them. We hope they would too, especially with mobile quarterbacks more and more. And there's seems to be a lot more of those opportunity guys where, like, if you're an athlete guy or you're somebody else that can be kind of utilized, you talk about some of the smaller backs might be utilized more in the red zone moving forward. I think you see some of these other guys who might have other skill sets that aren't just bangers. If they get a chance to use, in the red zone, they get a chance to be there inside the 5 guy, they're pretty successful a lot of times. So to me, I'm looking for those guys who are more the athletes overall.
What do you think, Adam?
Yeah, I feel generally the same, except I think I like the do-it-all handcuff types the most, then the explosive guys, then the grinders. And my reasoning there is it's like just the guys who end up with these weird one-off opportunities, who end up with a starting job for a couple years. I mean, it's, and I have such a soft spot for this name, but it's like the James Robinsons of the world. The like, I'm good enough at everything, where it's like, okay, like if you're trying to cheap out at running back, like, oh, suddenly I'm like a viable fantasy piece for a couple of years, where maybe I don't have the longest, NFL career of all time, or I eventually I'm just an afterthought, but like if you put him in the right spot, like it can work because you're capable of doing like all the things a starter needs to do. Like a Devin Neal or some of these guys like Giddens as well.
We need to talk about him, by the way, because that's a guy I love.
Yeah, and then there's something about, for me, when you get late, where it's just like the unique guys, like the unicorns. Last year, that's Tracy to me, where it's like, oh, I've got a dude who's like size-wise is a running back, like built physically is a running back. But he had played receiver before and had moved around, and it took him transferring to get over to running back. But like the coach that he had followed from school to school had the whole time been like, you're a running back, like please switch. And it took him a while to change over. When it did, it was successful. I'm like, that's a unique like situation we have here. And there's enough aspects that are green flags that you go for it, and it worked out. I mean, he had fumble issues, but as a converted receiver, like sure, but he looked generally fairly good as a pro. Now some people are overhyping him now, and that's a whole different thing. But as a prospect coming out, like he has certainly outperformed where he was drafted, and he has certainly outperformed where he was drafted in Dynasty. So that's something that I can really appreciate, is these guys who come in late, but it's like there's so many guys who are. We've talked about it. There's a bunch of these power back grinder types where it's like, I liked him a lot pre-draft. He's someone who the combine hurt for me, but like I've got a billion Kyle Manung guys, but like who's just like this unicorn, that can be always interesting for me.
Adam, I think you and I see it the same exact order. Like I like to do it all handcuff guy, because I like running backs. If you're not as talented, to be in a position where, like, if this situation arises, you're going to get a ton of volume. Like I said, that they're popular, the most popular, I would say, waiver wire pickups, during in a season, especially a redraft. So I love those guys because they have the opportunity, even if it's not for long term. And I know when we're talking rookies, we're usually talking dynasty, but they have the opportunity to like put up RB2 top 12 performances just based on volume, and they're just good enough. Like I always think about Jerome Ford, like when Nick Chubb first got hurt, like that first time around, like he just got a ton of volume and he was just good enough with that volume that you had a guy who was like a borderline RB1 there for a few weeks. And I like the guys like that who might be able to come in, especially in Atlanta situations where it looks like they will be the second string running back. And from that, it's for me, it's the receiving types. Kind of go to Chris's point, the athlete types who are usually in line with the receiver types. Especially, most fantasy leagues now are either half point or full point PPR. We do our rankings based on half point in the first place, and targets are just receptions are just worth so much more than just carries are. And then those type of guys, like they usually stay on rosters longer, not just because of the receiving element, but they usually help out more on special teams. And that's kind of why I have grinders as like third on my list. They're the most easily replaced type of running back, especially if like they're a day 3 pick. Like Chris, I like to your point, like, if they get in a certain role, they get touchdowns, which is very valuable. They can, and they do well in that role. They can get going kind of, but to me, it's a very specific lane that they have to fill and fill very, very well, or they're going to get replaced in a year or two. So for me, grinders would be the last. Not that I don't value any grinders, but it would be the value I value the least. I mean, Chris, you want to talk about DJ Giddens? Like, this is somebody who's been rising up, I think, everybody's boards as we've gotten into the process. Process, Adam's favorite word, the process. Still about the post show, we can get into inside jokes. We got to get a t-shirt of the process on Adam, like our hat. We got to do a hat. That's what we got to do. Everybody can kind of see it on the stream. But I know the Sixers guy coined it, but Adam makes it come to life like no other. I just Chris, go ahead. Talk about your boy DJ Giddens.
Yeah, DJ Giddens is the guy I have 8 on my board, but I gotta have him in the top 5. Look, he has so many things that I like, and that's where we were talking about Neal earlier. I looked at Giddens, I looked at Neal at similar time frames, and where separation was for me, it was I could see the game changing ability of Giddens where I couldn't necessarily see it for Neal. I want to see more in a passing game that wasn't somebody he got to shine or show necessarily as well. It has some drop issues. But a build that you see that he's able to catch the ball, he catches it smoothly, he doesn't fight the ball, he's able to turn over both shoulders, so I think he's going to catch the ball out of the backfield pretty fine. A guy that reminds me a lot of Matt Forte of his running style, where he just kind of has good feet soft and then goes. Doesn't necessarily always have to have the hole open, doesn't always see, he's able to kind of, you talk about gliders before, Dan, he kind of just glides where the hole is. He's able to kind of, doesn't necessarily have to start, change his speeds. He's able to kind of get tempo, and with this tempo, he's able to kind of figure out where he wants to go and just kind of glide there and go. Next thing you know, he has 6-7 yards, per rush. So this is a guy that I was very impressed with. Tape-wise, I thought it's got better over his career. I think he's shown improvement. Pass protection can definitely improve more, but a guy I thought got better over the last year or so. So I look at DJ Giddens, a guy I think is just finding some of his scratching potential in some ways, but was highly productive in college. So it's kind of ironic to say that, but I just like this kid a lot. And I think, any other draft, he probably would have been my top 3, top 5. But a guy that I definitely think has a chance, he gets on a roster to be an early 2-down guy, maybe even evolve into that 3-down guy.
Well, it's funny that you say that any other draft, because he is that guy who stuck out to me. I'm like,
step into the world of power, loyalty, and luck.
I'm going to make him an offer he can't refuse.
With family, cannolis, and spins mean everything.
Now, you want to get mixed up in the family business.
Introducing The Godfather at ChumbaCasino.com. Test your luck in the shadowy world of The Godfather slot.
Someday, I will call upon you to do a service for me.
Play The Godfather now at ChumbaCasino.com.
Welcome to the family.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
We're talking about him as a later sleeper. And again, he's moving up board, so he might not wind up being that late of a sleeper anymore. But like if you took last year's class, like I had Trey Benson my number 1 last year's class. Like I would have get inside of Trey Benson. Like, he would have been my number 1 running back last year. Like, and
or Lloyd, agree, yeah. Benson,
yeah,
Lloyd.
and the athletic ability, the 4.43 combo, 40 and everything like that. Like to your point, it shows on film. Like, this isn't one of those things where like I was shocked. So many people I felt like were shocked at the combine with DJ Giddens, like, oh, this guy's coming off the map.
It's good size. I think that's what people were impressed by. They didn't think he was as big as he was, could run like that.
Yeah, agreed. But I'm like, if you actually really watch the film, like, I wasn't surprised that he was a superb athlete. Kind of to your point, he does glide. That is one of the things that jumped off.
Runs a little too high. If you're going to knock him, he does run a little too high at times. That could be a definitely not supposed to short yard situations.
Yeah, well, I was just going to get to that because my player comp for him is Tank Bigsby, and I wasn't a big fan of Tank Bigsby, probably more so because, again, it was a weaker running back class. Bigsby was getting pumped up to being, a top 3 running back in that class, and he wound up getting the 3rd round. But what I didn't like about Bigsby is the same thing I don't like about Giddens. To your point, running too high for a bigger back, you don't run with your physicality that you could, especially at the goal line. I mean, he wasn't a great touchdown producer for a guy who got the opportunities that he did in Kansas State for that reason. So I do think I'm always cautious of guys like that, because then you wind up being like, you're a between the 20s player to me. And that can be, you can have a high floor if you're getting enough volume in between the 20s, but you don't necessarily have the pop if you, especially as a running back, if you're not getting those touchdowns and you're not trusted at the goal line situation. Bigsby did, did Travis Etienne just fall off a whole cliff? Like, I don't know. Like, I would say, like Jacksonville did give him more of those opportunities. I felt like that had more to do with like Travis Etienne turning into a 35-year-old running back at the age of 24 than anything else. But I don't
that
know.
That offense was hideous in general as well. So,
speaking of like Travis Etienne, just real quick, and then I'll get back to the kind of notes that we had here. But Trevor Etienne, who I actually like as one of my late deep sleepers. Has there ever been a guy who's been more negatively affected by his brother? I feel like that's why people aren't talking about it. I think it has more to do with Travis Etienne sucking this past year than anything to do with Trevor Etienne's process, because he's a pretty sneaky little back. Like, he's smaller. I complimented James Cook though, like kind of a similar thing where like you're smaller, but you've got good vision between the tackles. You are a good receiving back. Do I want to give you 300 plus touches? Probably not, but. I know James Cook surprised us all, last year with the amount of touchdowns he had in the red zone. I never really saw that coming. I wouldn't project Trevor Etienne to be in that boat, but I think it's a guy who's going to make him be a significant contributor on an NFL team. And I think his brother is actually screwing it up for him, which is weird because he was drafted high. People like Travis Etienne. Just now all of a sudden he's hated because he sucked so bad last year. I don't know. I just thought that was kind of funny to me. Like, I feel like you're just getting affected by your brother. But Adam, kind of get back to you. I did have us all kind of like pick out one, and being that you talked about Devin Neal already, you stole my do it all handcuff guy. So what was your handcuff guy?
That's tough. I'll throw it out there. I thought Jarquez Hunter is another guy who does a lot of things just really well. It's not someone who wows you, doing much, but one of these guys who's just B across the board, who I thought wasn't on the greatest run blocking team of all time, but still made it work pretty well. Was pretty good in terms of avoided tackles per attempt. Yards per route run wasn't great, but he was actually towards the higher end of pass blocking in this class. He wasn't a bad receiver; he just wasn't particularly good. Someone who could handle a workload. I thought the vision was not fantastic. And he's certainly not the most explosive runner of all time, but he's someone who, is pretty consistent, can get you those, good yards. He's just the type of guy who I don't think he's going to go particularly high, but I think he's someone who is like a definite NFL player in the sense that, like, I think you can probably develop into a fine special teamer. He just seems like that kind of guy who plays football hard. And seems to understand the game fairly well. So I like him a lot. I think he's going to stick around on rosters.
I like that because I comped on Michael Carter, and very similar, like smaller guy, but good hard runner. You play a lot bigger than you are, can do a little bit of everything. Special teams guy. Like, I like that across the board. Chris, did you have a do it all handcuff guy?
Yeah, I had Rocket Sanders. I definitely agree with Jarquez Hunter as a guy that I have up there as well. I think he could do it all. I have Rocket Sanders as a guy that I like the physical build. Wasn't necessarily as explosive as he had been after having the surgery the year before last year. But a guy that you just still see have a good 40, is getting better, and is kind of rounding back into shape, so to speak. A guy who's a big boy, 230, a guy that can get north-south really quickly. It was kind of surprisingly, I think, efficient out of the backfield, catching the ball as well for people. I think he's got a skill set that can surprise people, that maybe he can be a little bit more out there, not just an early down guy. And a guy that I know that he had his great freshman year, kind of where he put himself on the map. People are kind of down because he wasn't necessarily explosive, but statistically, he did a lot of things Quentin Jenkins did. So I look at him as a guy that I have in the same kind of class, in the same kind of tier, and a guy I think.
Jenkins.
Hey, it's Ryan Seacrest. Life comes at you fast, which is why it's important to find some time to relax. A little you time. Enter Chumba Casino. With no download required, you can jump on anytime, anywhere for the chance to redeem some serious prizes. So treat yourself with Chumba Casino and play over 100 online casino-style games, all for free. Go to ChumbaCasino.com to collect your free welcome bonus. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
I messed that up. Quishon Jenkins, I'm sorry.
Junkins, come on.
Junkins.
That's the poster. I can make fun of you now.
You can't make fun of me for that one because I just fucked that up. Yes, Quishon Jenkins.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're good because that was definitely fucking that one up.
Cut you off, but you had more analysis there on your guy. Go ahead.
But Quishon, I think he has a lot of similar skills that Quishon Jenkins does. So I think when Jenkins is a guy that we know because we did Ohio State, he got a lot more props for that. But I think similar guys, and I think Rocket Sanders to me is a guy that might surprise people, especially with how big he is, that he can do a little bit more than just be an early down guy.
Good God, did you guys see this alert? Case Keenum, $3 million to the Chicago Bears to back up quarterback. I'm like, I thought you were done. I thought you were out of the league. Jesus. Oh, that's hilarious. You see all the nice little tidbits.
Does that mean Dallas is going to trade for Tyson Badgett and give up like a 5th rounder or something for him?
I mean, they might as well. You already gave up, what was it, a 7th rounder and swapped compensatory picks for Joe Milton earlier. Like, I was just laughing. I messaged these guys in the Slack chat. I was like, yeah, that's right. Trey Lance, you suck more. That's how bad you suck. Now they're trading away picks to get Joe Milton in the building. Like,
well, Trey Lance is XFL, I think, or is it USFL now?
Well, yeah, my point being, like, you suck. Get out of here. I hated that pick so much. To get back, so the Raheem Sanders part with the pass catching, I wanted to outline for you that he had 1.5 yards per out run. He was 30th. So, like, to your point, he's a better pass catcher than I think people maybe realize. What I didn't like about Raheem Sanders, like, I think he's fast. I don't think he's quick, and I think he has terrible. So that's why he's a little bit lower on my board than for you.
He's a good pass protector, though, and that's one thing I think he has to get some credit for.
He is. I don't think he's ever going to be an efficient running back. Like, I don't know if he's ever going to get that shot because of that.
Well, you used a Damian Harris comp earlier. I think that's what he kind of reminded me. It was Damian Harris. That's what I see him as.
Who did I? Oh, hold on. I had it written. I don't have a comp for him. Actually, it looks like it's like the only player I don't have a comp for. The only running back. Adam, who? Did I guess you're Grinder?
Yeah, Hunter. No,
that was his do it all. Who's your Grinder, Adam?
Oh, a Grinder. Let's see. I mean, look, I'm again kind of backtracking a little bit, but
that's what I do. I put takes out and I walk them back.
No, Monangai is someone who, look, the tape is good. Like, he is a tough runner. He is a tough back. There was a lot to like early in the process. And I don't think that with the combine you completely kill him. He's someone who certainly fell on my board. I mean, there's no doubt about that. But he's it's strange because he's someone who, from all accounts at Rutgers, is like a workout warrior. So not like speed wise, but is someone who, like, in the weight room is just like intense. And a lot of those guys are at Rutgers. They've been weird like that the last few years.
Because it's Schiano, man. That's what Schiano does. That's the culture he builds. Yeah.
So, I mean, he's another guy who I think football coaches are really going to like. Now, he's someone who I just don't know where the role is on, like, special teams and whatnot. So that's going to be tricky. But I do think that he's going to make it to at least a camp. And I think that running back coaches are really, really going to like him. Because he's just one of those guys that actually tries his ass off and wants to be there and is, not just like, oh, I'm naturally gifted. It's like, no, I'm like trying to do everything I can to be here. And look, maybe that sometimes physical ability just outshines that, but it matters to a degree for sure.
No, yeah, it definitely does. Yeah, I try to stay away from it because I don't want to be biased, but yeah, Monangai, I still think the tape is there. We've seen guys who've run 4.6s and still be productive in this league. I comped him to Devin Singletary. I think that's a perfect comp for him. Like a guy who, we talked about earlier, Chris, right? Like in the first hour, or like running backs who just have good instincts. Like I think Monangai fits that bill. Like he just has good instincts.
He does. What bothered me about him though, Dan, was they seemed to try to figure out reasons not to use him, and it seemed like his usage was very kind of inconsistent. And that surprised me. Like I wasn't like it didn't seem like he had a set role in a sense, and that's where I felt like I don't know what you're going to be in the NFL if you can't necessarily establish yourself at Rutgers.
So that was two parts to that. So part one was that Rutgers was running the hell out of the ball. And so part of it is just like they were trying not to give him too many touches. The other part of that, and I'm drawing a blank on the guy now, but the other guy backing him up was a heavy recruit they brought in, and they wanted to get him ready to be the star next year. So it was that part too. So like, some of that I don't think was totally on Monangai not shining out like he was supposed to. It's kind of was going on. And again, I only know that because I follow Rutgers. I'm like the only one who does.
Well, to that point though, I kind of saw a similar thing with Harvey, where Harvey always was splitting time with somebody, no matter what tape you watched, and even they weren't good. He was always splitting touches with somebody, and I think that was where I kind of realized Monangai always seemed to be splitting touches with somebody, and they always seemed to kind of not necessarily like make him the dude on the feature part, where you saw boom games here, but then he would kind of fade. And then in the passing attack, I didn't really see him, which, is partly scheme-wise. I definitely understand that. But I didn't necessarily see him do things out of the backfield that I felt like he could do much more than be a runner.
Yeah, I mean, you don't see it on tape. Like I honestly, like, it was so few and far between when they would bother even targeting running backs. I couldn't even tell you if I think he's somebody who can do it and just didn't get the opportunity to do it. Because like it was that few, where it was like I don't even know because there's nothing on tape for it. So I mean, he definitely fits the grinder bill, for sure. Wait, I'm good. Chris, was your grinder Raheem Sanders, or was it some? No, that was your do-it-all Handcuff, right?
Yeah, you gave us, so for the listeners, he gave us kind of like a list of guys we had to choose from. So that was kind of the guys that we have as our grinders, and the grinder.
That's what I was trying to do. I was trying to organize it for like a group of guys, but like you just talk about whoever the hell you want. I don't care.
So for me, the grinder I would have chose if we're picking the guy my preference would have been Jordan James of the guys we were given. I think James is a guy that we talk a lot about Bucky Irving, and I don't want to keep throwing that comp around for everybody, but a guy that can do a little bit of everything, a guy that I wanted to kind of hate on because of Bucky Irving, and I was so tired of hearing about who the next Bucky Irving is. But I finally watched Jordan James tape, and I watched a guy who's very efficient, does a lot of things that you kind of see the Kyron Williams to do, the guy who's kind of, you can make up for guys not always getting where they need to be for blocking, doesn't need to huge his holes, has good hips so he can catch the ball out of the backfield pretty efficiently, isn't the guy that you're necessarily going to flex out as an option, but is a guy that I think you can utilize in three downs. So I think Jordan James is a guy that I kind of like for that. The guy I selected was Ollie Gordon, and I brought him more up because this is a guy that was, a Heisman hopeful going into last year. This past year fell off the map. Was it Oklahoma State? Was it him? I see a guy that is so confusing for me because a lot of the things were about his explosiveness, his big playability, but then he ran a poor 40. Then it was, what can he actually do with what can he do once he gets kind of pro? But you saw him in the Senior Bowl. He was actually played really well in the Senior Bowl, one of the guys that was highlighted in the Senior Bowl. So I want to kind of get more of your guys because Ollie Gordon's a guy that I'm down on. I see a guy who runs high. I see a guy who's not necessarily super explosive, but a guy who was, like I said, a Heisman hopeful going into last year, and a guy that has some people who like and had a pretty good postseason so far. Like I said, definitely one of the Senior Bowl standouts. So I had Ollie Gordon as that grinder guy where I think, as a grinder himself, I don't like him, Dan, because I think we talked about this before. Guys who don't necessarily finish in the red zone, he's a guy that I think dances way too much, especially when he gets closer to the end zone. I don't trust him to score those early touchdowns. I think he has more of a profile to be that in between the 20s guy that you talked about that can kind of be Pandora's box in a sense. So, but I'm curious what you guys think of Ollie Gordon.
Well, I mean, I totally agree. First of all, now that you're saying it too, I'm trying to think. I don't think there's anybody who fell more from like early pre-draft process to now than Ollie Gordon. Like, I couldn't stand Ollie Gordon because the first people had him as like a top 6 running back. Like, they were touting him like Ollie Gordon. I'm like, dude, there is nothing special about this guy. Like, I'm with you on that. Like, he wasn't even really like that efficient. He had a great year 23. Like, to your point, is why he was a Heisman hopeful coming in. But this past year, it was bad. I mean, it was like he only had 854 yards. He was below average in yards after contact, below average in missed tackles forced, below average in yards per out run. Like, everything kind of across the board for a guy who's like a do-it-all back. Just utterly disappointing. And somebody definitely fell a lot during this process. That is the type of guy where, to the grinder point of like guys I think are easily replaced. He's somebody I think gets drafted day 3, but could easily be replaced like within a year or two. Even if he winds up in a situation where he gets opportunities early, like easily would be replaced. So I'm kind of with you there. I don't know, Adam, do you have anything else to add?
No, I'm with you. It's tough because at times he's looked really good in college, but I just didn't think this last season was all that great.
No, and he's another one who's not playing against great competition. I mean,
Looking for excitement? Chumba Casino is here. Play anytime, play anywhere. Play on the train, play at the store, play at home, play when you're bored. Play today for your chance to win and get daily bonuses when you log in. So what are you waiting for? Don't delay. Chumba Casino is free to play.
Experience social gameplay like never before. Go to Chumba Casino right now to play hundreds of games, including online slots, bingo, Slingo, and more. Live the Chumba life at ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
For my grinder, it was Donovan Edwards. Partly because I just kind of wanted to highlight somebody who, kind of like Ollie Gordon, like a couple of years ago, was coming in with a lot of hype. Supposed to be an athlete, and then kind of just never got going, never produced. I'm not saying Donovan Edwards is like a late deep sleeper, but like just in that grinder of like, you're an athlete, like, so like maybe if something clicks for you at the next stage, like I could see a situation where whether he's drafted day 3 or even undrafted, like if he were to wind up on the Chargers with Harbaugh,
I was going to say he's such a Charger. He's such a Charger as you're talking. I was thinking he's such a Charger. It's a good call.
And if you wind up there with somebody who believed in you before, like, and maybe would give you the opportunity to take time to develop a little bit because you are an athlete, and he proved at the combine when he, ran a 4.4 and had a 10.51 10-yard split, or 1.51 10-yard split, excuse me, and a 38.5 vertical jump. Strong too, by the way. 23 bench press is really strong for a running back. So I think he's got a chance from that standpoint. My comp for him wound up being Kenyon Drake, who produced similar in college, similar type of athlete, not great vision, but got an opportunity to develop and then kind of took off when he had that chance. Like, I think there's a pathway for that. And again, a narrow one. Like, this would be a late deep, like we're talking 5th round. If you have 5 rounds in your rookie draft, that you would even maybe consider it. Otherwise, you're probably gonna pick him up off the waiver wire. But as just for that standpoint, somebody I kind of have my radar a little bit super late. Yeah.
Well, he has a profile. I think that's the interesting part. Is
right.
If you're to build a running back, like you're doing Madden and you're creating a running back, he looks the part. He has the good 40 time. He has the good size. He has the ability to catch the ball with decent hips. He's able to kind of, not a stiff guy in any sense. But the vision is what stands out to me, Dan. I just never saw the vision, and I think that's where he's going to have a hard time kind of shining. But I do think, to your point, his fit could play well with him, where he can wind up being a guy that kind of gets on a team like the Chargers, or I think even like the Chiefs, for example. A guy who's going to be a cheaper guy, but a guy who can get north-south and kind of do little things that look pretty good because he has the build to kind of make it happen.
The Chiefs are really interesting just in general, right? Because like if they re-signed Kareem Hunt, they brought in Elijah Mitchell, they have Pacheco. Like, you have old decrepit Hunt, you have 2 injury-prone running backs. Like, if they draft somebody from this class, which they should, by the way, like that's somebody who's going to get super hyped up. Like maybe like Kamani Vidal times 10, where it's like, yeah, you're in a situation where you might get the opportunity out of nowhere to just pop the hell off. Like, I could definitely see that whoever winds up on the Chiefs. So I don't think it would be a guy.
Look at Carson Steele's profile. I mean, he's 228. He was 6 foot. He played fullback for them, but Donovan Edwards does a lot of the things that Carson Steele does and builds very similar. So that's where Carson Steele kind of burst into the scene. That's why I think he could be like a Chief. And you talked about the physical ability. that's where I think Edwards has a chance because I think he's got a build that you can figure out where to kind of use him, and he's willing to play special teams as well.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna have my eye on whoever the Chiefs draft because that's gonna be a sexy little sleeper to take, flyer on. What about receiving types? Like, Adam, who'd you have as a receiving type back for your list?
Someone who I think is really interesting as a receiving type back, at the very least, I think he's going to stick on an NFL roster, is LaQuint Allen out of Syracuse. He's someone who
huge hands,
and
huge,
the Kawhi hands.
No, well, for sure. He's not like an incredible athlete or anything, and he's not even like the most productive receiver of all time. He had a 1.3 yards per out run this past season, but was lower the year prior. But what's really interesting about him is he's actually that like perfect combination. He's like what Woody Marks wishes he was, which I'm gonna take every opportunity I can to rag on Woody Marks. I'm sorry.
Amen.
But he's what he wishes he was in the sense where I'm not wowed as a runner. But what he is like an actual complete third down back in the sense that like not even like excluding the early guys that we've talked about, like class top to bottom, he might be the best pass blocker. He's up there in my opinion, at least for relative to size, pound for pound, one of the better pass blockers. I think he understands pressure really well. I think he stays in front of guys. I think he gets low. Just phenomenal in that sense. And then, Chris, to your point, has the big hands, like 3 drops over the last 2 years. As a guy who got like 50 targets in 2023 and 80 this past season. So 130 targets as a running back and to have 3 drops, pretty solid. Again, whatever is a runner, but someone who played special teams in college. So he is someone who, when we get to camp, and that's going to be a big deal for him, does have that leg up, can be, a good gunner. He's someone.
He is so Rashad White. He is so Rashad White. Adam, to me, it's so
but
apparent.
He's not going in the second.
No, I know. That's why I think it's a agreement, but also like an acknowledgement. Like, yes, this guy's going to catch the ball. He's got a good body. He's not going to he's not going to have a bunch of huge plays. He's not going to be a guy who's going to be a great runner, but he's going to be a dude that's going to be involved.
Exactly. He's not a crazy athlete, but he understands coverage. He can beat linebackers. He has great hands. He can run solid routes. Like, I don't know, good pass blocker. You're going to trust him out there and can play special teams. Like, that's something. Like,
I know, agreed.
That's how degraded I am on politics, by the way. I hear the word huge and I automatically jump into a Donald Trump impression. I just can't help myself at this point. No, I like that, Adam. I like that one a lot. Definitely somebody who's going to be later on. Definitely should have a role. Definitely could make a team because of the skill set, like you pointed out, especially with special teams. Like, I don't think people realize, like, when you're talking about these late running backs and receivers too fall in this category. Like, you're talking about these late guys, like how pivotal it is for them to be good on special teams to keep that roster spot to maybe eventually get that opportunity, especially if there's something about their athleticism that you like or skill set that you like. Like that's how they get those chances when you're talking about those guys going that late. Chris, who's your receiver?
Rashad Smith. We talked about Tyron Tracy and what he was able to do last year. Rashad Smith's a little bit younger than Tyron Tracy was coming out, but not necessarily the same kind of build, but a guy that isn't just a receiver. And I think that's what people need to pay attention to. Really effective, really explosive SMU this past year. Going back to the U days in Miami, he was a good receiver. He can catch the ball in the backfield, is a guy that you can flex out, is a weapon that you can use as a chess piece. A guy that I think absolutely is going to be out there. Now, pass protection is going to be an issue for him, but what I like about him is that as a third down guy, he won't be a guy that's just like a James White where he can only catch the ball. He's going to be efficient as a runner, and he's going to have some explosive plays as running the ball as well. So I like Rashad Smith a lot. I think that people are kind of knocking him because his conversion's been late in the game, the running back. They're not questioning what was SMU. Look, SMU was one of the better teams in the ACC last year, and he was one of the guys who made that team work offensively, and it was able to kind of be a mismatch, like I said, all over the field. I like him a lot. I think he's a guy that could be somebody who definitely outproduces his draft capital.
I totally agree he could outproduce his draft capital because you are talking about a guy who has near elite level athleticism. is he a guy who's ever going to be like, a bell cow? No,
No.
probably not. But is he a guy who I think could work his way into a role where he's getting 8 to 10 touches a game and like he's explosive enough to be a flex play off of that? Like, yeah, I do think he could be that guy. So I do like that pick out of you. That's somebody I think people aren't really giving him enough credit for. I think he's going to have more fantasy value than people realize. So we'll just wrap it up on mine, unless you guys have something else to add afterwards, which is fine. I want Marcus Jarns. Like I struggle sometimes when these smaller school guys get pumped up, but what he proved to me at the combine is that you are an NFL athlete. So that's no longer a question. Like you are an NFL athlete. You didn't just beat up on, lesser competition. Like you're legit in that category. Definitely going to be a receiver only. Like I'm not big on his vision. He doesn't have enough power to really ever consistently run between the tackles. I comped him to Andre Ellington, and I kind of like that from the standpoint of like Ellington half-point, full-point PPR leagues had a stretch there where it's like you kind of wanted Ellington as a flex play because he was getting you like 8 points a game minimum. Like he was a pinch, he was a bye week fill-in. And I think Jarns it will be a good kick returner too. So I think he's going to be able to make his way onto a roster just playing special teams if he has to. But the fact that he would prove that he was an NFL athlete to me is what solidified like, okay, you get a shot. Like you'll be on my radar for that reason. I'm trying to learn my lesson from Dylan Mwabe last year because I was one of the people who thought Dylan Mwabe could be sneaky, especially on a Raiders team that I already knew had shitty running backs. Like I knew Zamir White sucked. I knew Alexander Madison sucked. So I thought there was a shot. So I was trying to be careful about that when I looked at Marcus Jarns. But I'm like, no. I think Dylan Mwabe didn't prove he was a legitimate NFL athlete. Jarns did. So that was the difference for me.
I'll say as someone who did not like Labe last year, I when I watched Jarns, I did think I saw an NFL athlete, and I did not see vision. I didn't see a great runner, but to your point, like as a receiver only, as a guy who could potentially play special teams, like he actually looks like someone who belonged on an NFL field, and then of course, proved it, testing wise, but is actually an NFL athlete, and I never felt like that way with Laube. I didn't think he looked particularly explosive against his level of competition, whereas Jarns does.
He was like this Cam Scatterbo of D2. Anything else you guys want to add?
Well, I'll throw some names at you guys just to kind of get your feedback because I have some other guys on my board I was curious to see. Jacory Krosky Merritt from Arizona. Do you guys have any thoughts on him? He's a guy that I think could be like a little more explosive than people expect him to be. A guy that might be that rotational 8 to 12 touchdown, 8 to 12 touch guy. Do you guys have any thoughts on his explosiveness or his ability?
Yeah, he's somebody who's actually been kind of sneaking up. Like when people talk about late sleepers, he's a name that does come up. I think he belongs in that category of some of the guys we just talked about. Yeah, I mean, like what I just kind of said about Jarns, I guess I could probably say the same thing. Like he plays special teams, he should make a roster. I don't see a guy who's ever really going to get a real significant opportunity outside of like a few weeks. But he belongs in that category for sure.
Yeah, I mean, he's someone who I actually feel bad for in a sense that he just kind of got screwed going to Arizona and just not getting a ton of opportunity, because I feel like when you got to see him on the field like in 2023 and whatnot, he looked pretty good. But you just don't have a ton of sample with him at like any reasonable level of competition.
Well, speaking of sample, how about Jaden Blue? Because that's another guy that people are starting to get higher and higher on, and he has the newest flavor in the month in a sense where he's a Texas running back. He's got good athleticism. People are kind of reacting to Jaden Blue. Thoughts on Jaden Blue?
I think if the wind blows at 5 miles an hour, he gets toppled over. So I'm not a Jaden Blue guy at all. Like I get the athlete and that stuff we talk about all the time, but I just see a dude, if I breathe on him the right way, he's going to go right to the ground. So I'm not big on him.
I'm not big on him, but he is a guy who I think can be a pretty solid receiver for you and can do some things. I don't think he's necessarily ever going to be a starting running back. And to your point, I think he's getting maybe a little bit more hype than he deserves on the internet the last few weeks. But I do think he has an NFL role.
And the last one for you guys, and we definitely move on from the show, but I was definitely curious. So we talked about we value those vulture or the power backs kind of the least. But there's any guys we didn't talk about, some of these sleeper guys that maybe you think have a profile to make it a roster or, be somebody to kind of watch out for. Maybe not somebody you're spending draft capital on, but a guy that you're looking at when it comes to doing the dirty work and scoring some of those touchdowns or some of those bigger bruiser guys that we forget about in today's NFL quite often.
Oh, let me go to my list real quick. I have a couple guys.
I'll give you an example for one like Phil Maffa from Clemson isn't a guy who's going to win any beauty contests, but a guy that absolutely is going to smash you and is going to get that physical. If you need a yard, you need 2 yards, he will absolutely get it for you. If you want to end the game, you have a 4-minute drill, he'll put a team to sleep. So that's one of the kind of guys I think Ontario Brown from Northern Illinois, a guy who had injury issues, but a guy who's big, strong, and pretty good athlete. I think he ran a 4.48. That's what he had been supposed to be able to run. But another dude that's a huge dude and is definitely willing to bang you and run you over.
Well, I don't have anybody on my list that's that big, but one guy we didn't talk about who I think belongs in the grinder section would be like Montrell Johnson out of Florida. 5'11", 212, solid size. I think he proved to be more of an athlete than I think people were realizing when he ran a 4.41 and stuff like that. And he's a guy who can kind of do that at a smaller sized kind of deal, but a better athlete maybe than some of those other guys. So somebody belongs in that grinder category.
Yeah, no, he was the exact name that I was thinking of. So I agreed there.
All right. Well, I'm good with the post show. You guys good with it?
Yes, sir.
Well, again, if you guys stayed with us, thanks for that. And make sure you check us out. We'll be doing post shows from now on, and or at least when it's needed for the extra info that we got going on, which is usually every show. But we'll be back next week. Pat Fitzmaurice, wide receivers, Chase Thornton back in the building too. Excited to get him back, get our co-host back, get our four amigos back. Can't wait for that. So again, make sure you're downloading Operation Domination Football Podcast. Make sure you're checking us out on the YouTube channel, the Fantasy Football Advice Network channel. We got the draft special coming up that's going to go live from a bar over in Nashville for at least the first round. We're still trying to work out the Friday details. I think we're going to stream on Friday for the second and third round. It just might not be live from the venue, but we'll definitely be live from the venue on that Thursday. So I'm looking forward to that. I'll see you guys then.
Step into the world of power, loyalty, and luck.
I'm going to make him an offer he can't refuse.
With family, cannolis, and spins mean everything.
Now, you want to get mixed up in the family business.
Introducing The Godfather at ChumbaCasino.com. Test your luck in the shadowy world of The Godfather slot.
Someday, I will call upon you to do a service for me.
Play The Godfather now at ChumbaCasino.com.
Welcome to the family.